Hi, my name is Prescott Johnson. Take number 72 or something like that. Um, Welcome to the God-fearers hypothesis. It is my channel that's going to be devoted to an exploration of the events in the first century that are recorded in the Christian New Testament. I have spent the last 30 years of my life on a journey away from evangelical Christianity. And along the way, I've taken a peek under the hood at the earlier iterations in terms of chronology in the last 2,000 years. And what I became struck with at some point in time was about the first century believers, at least according to the New Testament itself, were very much not really identifiable as any of those forms of Christianity. And it seemed clearer to me in time that I've either convinced myself so much that I'm correct on this, that all I've done is I've just reformed everything in my mind in order to see what I thought I saw was correct, because I'm just unwilling to look at any evidence to the contrary. And this led me to developing a list of rules that I keep in mind when I'm reading the text, that I use to decide whether something is reasonably true or reasonably, and I don't want to say propagandistic, but probably more accurately, it would be that they were things that, because they could be used or could be interpreted in various ways, it allowed itself to be useful for supporting later ideas that emerge. Because at the time that the New Testament was canonized in the 4th century, and I understand that there would have been a great consensus about books that could be or should be considered at least more authentic to the 1st century than others, we still don't have any of those original documents. Even if we have a parchment, it really doesn't tell us usually, like there's no, as near as I can tell, there's no actually existing book. And that's not evidence that there isn't or that there wasn't. What we do have, if it supports the claims of Christianity, all well and good. But what if it doesn't? What if it actually says things that actually say something very different? Potentially something that resonates better with history, better with the trajectory of movement. If we were to say, position ourselves before the time of Jesus to understand the world and the movement and the direction and what was going on within the Jewish community, and then move forward, because you have 3 years of ministry of Jesus, and then you have the book of Acts, which takes us up to the early 60s. So that really gives you about maybe 35 years, 40 years tops, of a period in which you base the eternal truths of Christianity. And then you depart from that, you skip over the next number of years and the situations with the Jewish community and what happens in Judea, and suddenly we're into the early church fathers and Christianity is a rip-roaring show. How does that fit into actual history? So, do we really know? There are things that are there that should not be there, and there are things that are not there that should be there. So things like the virgin birth. The virgin birth is supported by the New Testament. Where? Where is it supported in the New Testament? See, the obvious answer is, well, in the 2 nativity stories of Matthew and Luke. True. But the importance of the virgin birth
in Christian doctrine is nowhere mentioned in the New Testament documents, at least the 27 that are currently being used. So if the virgin birth is relevant to the theology of Christianity, then shouldn't it appear in the theological meanderings of the various writers in the New Testament, beyond something that literally just gets stuck in there as though, oh, well, we'll just put this in here. They'll just accept that that's factual, or that is scriptural, or that writing is inspired by God. I mean, this is the elevation of the New Testament as Holy Scripture, means that if it's in there, well, it's got to be true. Except that if it is true, then how come Paul doesn't talk about Jesus in that way? Now, we think he is because he alludes to the language of Son of God and so on and so forth. But again, it's like, well, okay, so if that really was how they saw Jesus as born of a virgin, then why does it actually not employ the arguments within the structure of his theology? So yes, the virgin birth is mentioned twice in Matthew, once in Matthew, once in Luke, and it's tethered to a prophecy in Isaiah, which I've dealt with, and you can find in the at the bottom of my playlist is the playlist of the videos that I made for my other channel, and they're still over there. But in these videos, I take an opportunity to ask some questions about the virgin birth and about understanding what the prophecy was and how it's problematic because it requires two virgins giving birth to two male babies and calling those male babies Emmanuel. But there's even more arguments that can be added to that. I'm going to do that in this channel now. So that is the first example of a rule that I employ when I'm looking at the text. There's a few more that fit under that category, and the opposite view, the things that are there that shouldn't be there. We're going to take a look at one of those in the first video